It's a win-win, dude. Mike Tyson.
Beating Mike Tysons Punch Out is a pretty impressive feat when it comes to achievements in video games. I mean, the whole thing about Mike Tysons Punch Out was the fact that you're going up against Mike Tyson, you know, one of the most feared boxers in the world, the whole reason why I even bought this game in the first place as a kid in the 90s. They also did a pretty good job emulating how hard it would be to beat Mike Tyson if you fought him via virtual boxing. But it's been a while, and eventually beating Mike Tyson is now a bit too easy to do for any pro players of the game. In fact, they could probably do it blindfolded. Literally.
Yes! $14-0.
So, how do you do something as impressive as beating Mike Tyson's Punch Out blindfolded? Well, don't worry about it, because that's what I'm here to do, since I've literally done that a few months ago. Now granted, Sinister 1 has already done a video on how to beat the game blindfolded, but like, who cares? See how long this shit is? So for this video, I'm going to explain the fastest way to learn how to beat Mike Tyson's Punch Out blindfolded. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. Like, beating a game blindfolded in general can be a monumental task when you really think about the practice that goes into it. But my strategy that I used to beat the game is pretty easy, efficient, and doesn't take too much effort to do. And if you're just a newbie who just wants to beat a blindfolded to feel cool, or maybe just want to see how it's done, then this video is for you. Anyways, I think that's enough rambling, so we'll finally get into Mike Tyson's Punch Out and the box you have to fight before, you know, getting to Mike Tyson. Glass Joe, the first fight in the game. Glass Joe is a pretty wimpy dude, so you could honestly just beat him blindfolded with no plan in mind. But the quickest and most efficient way to do it is with a buffer strategy made by people in the Punch Out community. I feel like I should pull out the original source of the strategies mentioned, but to be honest, I have no idea who made it. All I can say that it was probably made before my time. Anyways, it's a pretty well-known buffer strat, and if you know how to speedrun the game, you probably know what I'm talking about. Before we get into that though, we first have to understand what buffering means in Punch Out. Hopefully you already know what buffering is, but if you don't, then here's a quick summary. To buffer in Mike Tyson's Punch Out is to pre-plan a move on the first frame of your character, Little Mac. An easy way of explaining this is, let's say you want to dodge to the left twice. Any normie would tap left, wait for Little Mac to do his thing, and then tap left again once he makes it back to the middle. Now that sucks. Why? Because it's slow. That's mainly due to the fact that you waste extra frames when resetting back into the middle, because a human's reaction speed is just too slow for a high-intense hardcore game that is Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So the faster way of doing it is to buffer the input, which is to put the input in advance whilst Little Mac is busy doing another move. That way, Little Mac is able to perform the next move you want him to do on the first frame that he's free to move in. You can do that with basically most of Little Mac's moves. Now, a buffer strategy is a string of buffered inputs usually used to time a punch on an opponent. Since Glass Joe has a small window that can be used to KO him, which happens in the 42 mark of the fight where Glass Joe jumps back and taunts the player, you're able to knock out Glass Joe for good with a punch when he makes his way back. But if you're too late, Glass Joe will either get knocked down but get back up, or block it. The buffer strategy for Glass Joe consists of 22 left face punches, 1 left gut punch, 2 right gut punches, and 1 left gut punch. The 22 left face punches are used for Glass Joe to block so he can't attack you. The 1 left and 1 right gut punch is used to delay yourself a bit before landing the final KO punch with the second right gut punch. Now, Glass Joe actually has 2 different types of delays before he moves in for the final hit. One where he moves his hand twice, and one where he moves his hand 4 times. The right gut punch is used to counter the first delay, and the left gut punch is used to time the second delay. So it doesn't matter what kind of delay it gives you, all you gotta do is follow the pattern perfectly and you'll be able to beat the fight. Glass Joe is actually a good start to practice both buffering and getting used to playing the game blindfolded, because believe me, you do not realize how limited you are once you cover your eyes. So it's best to practice on this guy for a bit before moving on to the other fighters, because learning how to buffer is crucial to beating this game blindfolded. That's all there is to Glass Joe, and now we can finally move over to the next boxer, Von Kaiser. Now unlike Glass Joe, there's a bunch of different ways you can take this guy down, ranging from how fast you want the round to be. One thing I would like to note before continuing is that Von Kaiser has to be knocked out 3 times in order to beat him, and a backup strat you can do just in case you mess up is to throw this combination of left face punches and right gut punches. Just keep throwing face punches, and once you hear him dodging, follow it up with a right gut punch. You should be able to get a bunch of stars there, which you can try to use during the fight by dodging randomly and countering. Anyways, Sinister 1 did make a strategy to beat him that has 1 unbuffed move, but I'll get to that part in a second and just explain the strategy from the start. Sinister 1's strategy is a face punch, 3 left dodges, 5 face punches, 1 unbuffered duck, 1 face punch, and a star punch. The first face punch is just a freebie for the fight. The 3 dodges are to buffer for his jab, the 3 face punches is to counter, and another 2 right after because he just doesn't block for some reason. A duck to dodge his next jab, and then a retaliation face punch and a star to send him down. Now, the duck is not buffered, which means you have to manually time it yourself. An easy way to figure out how to time it is that before doing it, think back to the 2 extra face punches on Vaughn. The first one has a chance of giving you a star, but the second one is guaranteed. To time the duck, all you gotta do is listen to the star punch sound effect on the second punch, and once you hear it go completely silent, then you can duck. Now remember, you can wait a little bit before ducking. Von Kaiser's still a beginner boxer. We're not at Mike Tyson level yet, so don't stress too much about the timing. Anyways, that's the first phase of the fight. By the way, most Punch-Out fights are broken down into different phases, each phase being when the opponent gets up from a knockdown. Probably should have told you that before, but it's better now than never, I guess. So the second phase is pretty simple. Buffer a face punch as soon as the fight starts, dodge twice, counter with a face punch, and then throw a star punch. And boom, phase 2 done. Now the third phase can be different depending on how many stars you have. Let's rewind back to the start of the fight again. In phase 1 on Von Kaiser, you knock him down via star punch, which you can get by punching him in the face. The thing is though, there's actually a chance for you to get 2 stars during the first phase. For the first buffer strategy, it's during the 5 face punches where the fourth one has a 50-50 chance of giving you a star, with the second one being guaranteed of course. So make sure to listen to the game to see if you got 2 stars or not, since this can impact how you approach phase 3. If you didn't get 2 stars in phase 1, then phase 3 is just phase 2 again, which is punching him in the face, dodging twice, but countering with a star punch instead of the usual face punch and then star. If you did get a star however, then instead you can just dodge twice and throw a star punch. But if you're not sure if you have a star or not, you can always just do the no star strategy instead. Nobody's really timing you for this shit. Using the star does not do much but just save a few seconds. But yeah, that's basically everything for Von Kaiser. There's probably a little bit more to him, but I feel like this is the best way you could explain him in simple terms. Now with Von Kaiser out of the way, we'll be moving on to the last guy in the minor circuit. And this guy is way more difficult than like anything else. Piston Honda. I don't really know what to say about this guy. Out of everyone in the minor circuit, which is literally just 3 people, Piston Honda is definitely the toughest out of the group. Even harder than a few of the boxers after the circuit to be honest. He's not too difficult of a boxer, but he's pretty well known in the Punch-Out community for being pretty difficult. Not because his fight is challenging or anything like that, but because Piston Honda has a big factor that separates him from all the other boxers in the minor circuit. His randomness. Don't get me wrong, Piston Honda does have a pattern, but it can change quite frequently. It's the first fight you'll run into where not every outcome will be exactly the same. Sometimes he'll throw a hook at you, maybe an uppercut, so it's hard for Punch-Out players to make a strategy to beat this guy blindfolded since you can't really tell what punch this guy is throwing. Honestly, I didn't even know what to do when I fought this guy blindfolded. I mean, I kinda did, but for most of it I was just dodging randomly. Luckily, after a few minutes of research, I figured out the strats to properly beat this guy so that you won't be just guessing like my dumbass was. And surprisingly, there is actually a buff strategy you can do against Piston Honda, so we can ignore all the RNG for now, but I'm still going to give a brief summary of Piston Honda just in case so that if you do ever mess up, you won't be completely left in the dark. So, for every minute of the fight, Honda will back up and do a little dance before going to his iconic Honda Rush. He'll jump back in and do a bunch of really quick punches. They're actually quite hard to dodge, and it's better to just block the hits rather than to try and dodge them. But a big thing about this attack is that it's kinda like Glass Joe's little taunt move, which means you can knock Piston Honda out in one punch if it's timed well enough. Although he will get back up after to continue fighting you, but in doing so makes another mistake which you can use to your advantage. For some reason in Mike Tysons Punch Out, if a boxer gets up on a 1 count, a star punch is all it takes to knock him out again. Even if the dude gets up at full health, it just gets wiped out in 1 hit. Two left face punches, and to top it all off, 3 left gut punches finally send him down. That's the first phase done, and luckily the second phase is pretty simple. Like I said before, boxers get up on a 1 count, you can kill him with the star punch. All you gotta do is buffer a star punch, and that's that phase over. The third phase is a bit tricky however, since you gotta do a move that I haven't talked about yet, guard manipulation. So surprisingly, if you pay close attention to the boxers, you notice that their guards can actually switch up from their chest to their gut, depending on where you've been punching. I say that it's pretty surprising because honestly, for a game made in the 80s on the NES, that's a pretty cool detail most players overlook. Anyways, if you tap up on the controller, you can see that some of the boxers move their gloves up to block. If you're fast enough, you can actually sneak in a gut punch before they bring their guard down, but that only works in certain boxes, like Piston Honda. So to start off phase 3, you're going to have to tap up on the controller to raise his guard, and then punch him in the gut twice. You don't really have to do this input quickly. It's better to practice this with your eyes open so that you can get a feel for this move before doing it blindfolded. Anyways, those gut punches get you 2 stars, which gets your star count back up to 3. So you can buffer a star punch after that, and then your next move is to hold down the block button. Make sure to keep holding down the block button until you hear Honda attack, which, if you were blocking, should stop the punch from hitting you, leaving Honda open. You can then retaliate with a face punch and then follow it up with a star punch after. And when that's done, buffer your last star punch to TKO him. The thing is though, there's actually a chance of him getting TKO'd by the second last star punch than the last one, since when he gets up from his second knockdown, there's a chance for his health to either have a big refill or a small refill when coming back. Since you're blindfolded, you can't really tell what it is, but it's better to just assume that it's a big refill. But yeah, that's basically it. Here's a quick summary on what to do in case you forgot. But yeah, that's the minor circuit finally done. I'm not bothered to make a transition sequence, so... Well, we finally made it to the major circuit. This might seem as a step up since you're going further in the game, but once you got the whole game figured out, you'll come to realize this section seems more like filler to the upcoming world circuit. Mainly because most of the boxes here have a set in stone pattern which can make for some ridiculously easy buffer strategies to follow. So it's safe to say that you've made to a sort of intermission sequence of blindfolded punch out where you won't have a migraine over what punch the boxer is throwing. Anyways, if you have eyes, you should know that we're up to Don Flamenco, who is up there with the easiest punch out boxers to beat. Like, this dude is so simple it's not even funny. He's literally the boxer you can knock out the fastest in the entire game. His whole gimmick is that he only punches when you attack, but the thing is, you can retaliate his retaliation to get a shitload of punches in. And that's it, that's all he does. His whole pattern is just waiting so that you punch him. The only time he ever does attack without being provoked is when either you or him gets knocked down, or if Lil Mac gets tired. And to be fair, you can't buffer a dodge to get out of the way of his first two punches. They have to be done like a little bit later. Look, this guy's just the easiest boxer to beat, so you can see why I consider this part of the game filler. But yeah, about done. You can only get a star punch from this guy if you stun him and punch him in the face in the last possible frame. And as you could guess, this was like a nightmare for speedrunners at the time. But a buffer strategy was luckily made that made this fight all the more trivial to punch out players. By punching him in the gut, doing a full dodge to the left, and then a quick dodge to hit him in the face, you can receive a star, which you can buffer for an instant KO. This is why you need star punches to this guy, because one star punch just kills him. I never really went over quick dodges. It's a skill most newbies don't know until playing later in the game, where they realize pressing up or the opposite direction where they were dodging, Little Mac will return back to the starting position quicker than you usually would. It really isn't that hard to do, but I recommend practicing it a bit when you go blindfolded, since the lack of vision makes it harder to time when to click up or not. And yes, press up to quick dodge. Pressing the opposite direction might fuck you up or accidentally make Little Mac dodge. And also the fact that you'll probably punch the boxer in the face after, so it's just better to learn to click up than left or right. But yeah, the buffer strategy for this guy is a left gut punch, one left dodge, one left quick dodge, one left face punch, and a star punch. Then the second phase can be sorta difficult as you can't buffer a dodge to get out of the way, but you know, who says you have to do that? Don's flashy uppercut, you can actually interrupt it before he punches by hitting him in the gut. And you can keep buffering those left gut punches, his Don will keep doing this uppercut move, and down he goes. Literally, like, he doesn't get up after that, and that's the whole of Don Flamenco. The only other bit of info I could give is that in case you do fuck up the quick dodge, you can just do the thing I said before, but make sure to alternate between left and right face punches since that extends the amount of punches you can hit him with. See, look at that, I just KO'd him in one combo of whatever you call hitting him a bunch of times. Phase 2 is the same, and in case he does get up somehow, which happens if you haven't KO'd him fast enough, he still does the same thing, so phase 3 is just phase 2 again. And that's Don, the easiest fight in the game, and honestly the next fight after that is also just as simple, to be honest. King Hippo is another one of those easy fights in the game, since there's only one strategy you could really do, which is buffered, and it's not too hard or anything to do, it's just long and boring. Not gonna go over King Hippo too much since he's just as basic as Don. You can't attack him during the fight unless he opens his mouth, which makes his pants drop.
Embarrassing!
Opening his guard for you to land a bunch of gut punches on him, usually 8, but it can be 9 if you hit him fast enough. You only need to knock him out once since his fat ass can't get back up, and he only has 2 punches that he can do. A jab and an uppercut where he opens his mouth. I'm not even sure you can call this an uppercut since uppercuts go up, but with the way King Hippo moves, it looks like he's trying to play whack-a-mole using Little Mac's head. Anyways, there's one main buffer strategy that most people use for this fight, which can be modified so that the fight can be done faster, but I'll talk about those strats later and start off basic with the original buffer. So to start off the fight, you'll need to buffer 9 left gut punches to drain your stamina. You do this because King Hippo is programmed to throw 3 uppercuts when Mac is tired, which you should be able to hear since he makes some 8-bit growling noise or something. Anyways, after those 9 left gut punches, you'll have to dodge to the right, not left, for a total of 6 times to avoid 2 of his uppercuts. Little Mac should get his stamina back to 9, which means you're able to throw a punch, so buffer a left face punch after those 6 dodges and punch him in the gut 8 times, and then repeat. 9 left gut punches, 6 dodges, a face punch, and 8 gut punches. This pattern should repeat for a total number of 4 times, or 4 cycles, to knock him out. Make sure to count in your head the number of punches you should throw, since throwing that many could mess up with your memory on how the buffer strat goes. If it makes things easier, an easy way to remember is to count and listen to what punch you're throwing, since a connecting punch and a blocked punch make 2 different noises. And if you accidentally mess up the buffer, it isn't too bad, you still know what you're doing, which is draining your stamina, and if you mess up the dodging buffer, you can just try dodging the normal way, which is listening to King Hippo when he throws an uppercut, because when he does do an uppercut, he opens his mouth, which you can hear for some reason. So listen and dodge the first 2 uppercuts, but make sure to counter the 3rd one, and hopefully you should remember what to do from there. That's basically the most simple version of beating King Hippo, which I recommend for newbies, but if you want this fight to be done faster, there's a few little modifications you can do. You can start off the fight by buffering 3 right dodges and then a left face punch. This perfectly times it so if King Hippo throws an uppercut, and I do say if, as King Hippo throwing an uppercut has a threat of 8 chance, so if he blocks it, you can just go back to the normal strategy. But remember, you're a heart down, so your usual 9 punches goes to 8 to drain stamina. But if you do hit him though, you can punch him in the gut 9 times. Another buff you can do for dodging is that where instead of doing the usual 6 dodges to get 8 punches, you can do 5 dodges to the right, a quick dodge to the left before buffering a face punch for 9 gut punches instead of 8. The reason why people do this, and I'm not going to go too deep into detail here because most of the info from this section just comes from this video by MPEP. Basically, every boxer starts off with 96 health and every punch you do to Hippo does 3 damage. If you do the math, you need to punch Hippo 32 times to knock him out. And if you divide that by the amount of punches you can land on Hippo, then you need him to open his mouth 4 times. However, if you punch him in the face on the first 5 frames of his opening, it can do 5 damage instead of 3, and you can land 9 gut punches instead of the usual 8. Meaning you can get a 3 cycle for this buffer strategy instead of the usual 4. This is more of a new and improved pattern for being King Hippo, which you can do once you get more comfortable with playing blindfolded. And yeah, that's all there is to King Hippo. Jesus, I thought talking about the major circuit would be quick and easy, but I've been talking about King Hippo for like 3 minutes. Anyways, hopefully you get a good grip on these strategies. I don't think I've said this before, but I highly recommend practicing these strategies with your eyes open before, playing them blindfolded, so you know what you're doing. The next boxer after this is pretty easy, and it sort of concludes the filler section of the game before getting to the last boxer and the pain that is the world circuit. Okay, now I know I told you that Don Flamenco is easy, but Great Tiger, he's not as easy as Don. Great Tiger is one of the very few fighters that have a simple pattern with no RNG, and the buffer strategy is basically the same thing. No alternative strats, or what to do if he does X or Y, it's pretty simple. His main pattern for the start of the fight is to throw delayed jabs, which you can tell are coming because the little jewel in his turban flickers before he throws them. After a minute though, he'll switch from jabs to slow uppercuts, and a bit after 2 minutes he'll go back and do some magic shit, because he's a magician I think, spinning around spinning around the ring and throwing a flurry of jabs which you can't counter, only block. At the 5 blocks though, he'll start tweaking out, which you can punch him in the face for an instant KO. You shouldn't make it to this part though, or even the uppercut part either, since when his turban flashes at the start, you can punch him in the face for a star, and you can get a shit ton of stars from that, which you can use for a TKO. The usual strat for Great Tiger is to stock up on stars and burn them slowly during the fight. You can buffer these stars by dodging, although the first one might be annoying to get since... Actually, I might as well just go through the whole thing. You start off the fight by dodging to the left 4 times, the last one being a quick dodge before throwing a left face punch. Then you dodge to the left 3 times and punch him in the face again, and then you repeat the second step twice so you have 3 stars. You can then buffer 2 star punches before dodging to the left again and hitting his face for a star punch. Throw a star punch, and then dodge twice and punch him in the face for another star, and then buffer 3 dodges before punching him in the face to knock him out. Great Tiger will get back up on a 1 count, and if you haven't forgotten already, this means that he'll get knocked out with 1 star punch. Since you have 2 star punches, you can just buffer 1 star punch to start the fight and down he goes. Luckily, for some reason, he gets up on a 1 count again, so you can literally just buffer another star punch and that's the end of Great Tiger. So yeah, an all around simple fight to be honest, and this kinda concludes the filler section of Punch Out. There is some small changes you can do at the start of the fight if you're nervous about buffering a quick dodge. You can try to do 3 ducks instead of 4 dodges, but they would need to be timed a little late for the face punch to actually land. But if you're really uncertain that you might mess up both of those strategies, then you can instead start the fight off by punching him in the gut and dodging to the right 3 times before doing a left face punch. Doing this is all buffered, and honestly, now that I think about it, doing that instead of the usual strategy at the start might just be a better idea to do in general, because there is a little time difference between the two, and it's just way easier to do if I had to be honest. If you somehow mess up though, or just forget, I recommend just blocking his jabs for the first minute, and start buffering left and right gut punches when he does his uppercut, since you can get a star from that. Tiger moves to the left and right for his uppercuts, so if you pick up and follow the pattern there, you can get a decent amount of star punches and use them when necessary. For his special attack though, you can just block the 5 punches and punch him in the face. That's it. Like I said before, pretty simple. I'm not going to spend any more time on Great Tiger. I'm just going to move straight on to the next guy. Bold Bull. This guy's a doozy. This guy's quite a few things you could do, which you can combat against, but there's little room for error during the fight, and this is a fight you do not want to mess up on. I know because I fucked up and lost when I played the game blindfolded, and I will never forgive myself for that. I lost, didn't I? I can't believe it. Anyways, Bulbo isn't too different, but he's one of those boxers that jumps back to do his own unique thing, which is dubbed the Bull Charge, and it happens at the 2-minute mark of the fight. There's no way to count this with a buffer either, so it's up for you to time it yourself, but you shouldn't get to that part. You should be fine as long as you don't mess up too badly. For the start of the fight, Bulbo will open up with 5 rolling jabs, and then he'll move on to his hook pattern. He'll throw 2 hooks, so he can either do another one or go back to rolling jabs. If he throws rolling jabs, the pattern restarts, but if he throws a 3rd hook, he'll immediately follow it up with fast uppercuts. The amount being thrown is random every punch, but eventually he'll stop and the pattern restarts. Okay, now that I look at it, this pattern is pretty simple. Damn, is it really that easy? Like, there's nothing else I can say, that's all he does. So most strategies I've talked about here have been buffer strategies made by professionals, but this is one that I've made up to make this fight as easy and simple as possible. Except for phase 1 though. You start the fight off by punching Bull in the face twice to get a star, which you can use straight after to drain his health down. Punch him in the face again for another star, then buffer another star punch. Repeat that process again to deal some extra damage, and then punch him in the face twice to knock him out. All of this is buffered except for the last part at the end. This small punch has to be thrown a little later so that it can slip through Bull's guard. An easy way of timing it is listen to the punch before it, and punch once the star sound effect is gone. An alternative move, which I usually do, is just buffer another star punch so that the entirety of phase 1 is buffered. You'll lose a star to use later, but we're not going for fast times in this video, we just want to knock this guy out, so it doesn't really matter. For phase 2, you can punch him in the face to stop his jab that he tries slipping in. There's a chance for you to get a star here or not, I think it's like a 50-50 chance, but it doesn't really matter, we're not going to use it. You can buffer 3 left dodges to dodge his first hook for 3 face punches. You can dodge again and then punch him in the face quickly to stop his hook and get a star. Then you can dodge twice before buffering a star punch to hit Bull. You do this because, like I said before, Bull has a chance of throwing rolling jabs or hook. Hook goes off after 2 dodges, but the rolling jabs are delayed a little bit before they're thrown, which means if you are punching him, you need to dodge again so that you can actually hit him. You see, this is bad because you can't see the game, so knowing when to dodge if he's throwing rolling jabs or if he's doing a hook makes it so much more difficult because you have to make a split-second decision to hear if he throws a hook or not. By dodging to the left twice and buffering a star punch, you can basically counter both scenarios and have time to figure out what punch he's throwing. If it's a hook, you can hear it go off during the 2 dodges, and if it's rolling jabs, you just won't hear anything. If he throws rolling jabs, then after countering him with a star, make sure to punch him in the face twice to interrupt his other punches before going back to the start of the pattern again. Except it's 2 dodges to dodge the first punch and not the usual 3. If he throws a hook though, it's all good. The star punch counters him before he can do anything. After that though, he'll start throwing uppercuts. It's pretty simple to dodge, just 1 to the left and you should be out of the way, and you can hit him in the face with 7 punches. The chances of him throwing an uppercut is pretty random, but eventually he'll stop and go back to his normal pattern. There's no easy way for you to tell if he's going to keep doing uppercuts or not, so make sure to listen to the game order to see if he's doing an uppercut or if he's going back to his normal pattern. And the amount of times you have to dodge before his pattern starts up again is also varied, since there's a chance for him to take a short delay or a long delay. So make sure to listen to see if he does his hook early or late. But yeah, you keep repeating this pattern until he gets knocked down. And for phase 3, well, nothing changes really. Bull doesn't try to sneak in any punches or anything, so you can just keep doing what you're doing until you knock him out again. And that's Bull, a pretty difficult fight that can be broken down to an easy one if you learn his patterns. I feel like I was hyping this up a bit as something big, but now that I think about it, it's actually just pretty simple. I guess it's because most people when they play blindfolded lose to Bull, which is fair because he's a pretty tough guy overall, and making small mistakes could lead to some very bad outcomes. But as long as you know what you're doing and keep yourself calm and collected, you should be fine. And yeah, that's it. That's everyone in the major circuit. Now we'll be moving over to the world circuit, which is easily the hardest part of Punch Out. This is like what turns little boys to big men. Here we are, the world circuit. We have officially made it past the halfway point through the game. And yes, it does get more difficult as we play on. If I had to describe it in a way that makes sense, it's kind of like an endurance round in Mortal Kombat, which is basically where you fight 2 opponents instead of 1 in a match. You don't actually have to do that in the world circuit, but the amount of boxes you have to fight without any checkpoints in between makes this section a nightmare for anyone playing Punch Out for the first time. Anyways, there are 6 different boxes you have to find in the world circuit. The first one being Piston Honda. Okay, look, I know we fought him before, but this is different, alright? This time, he has a bandana. They're not running out of sprites or anything, it's fine. But yeah, Piston Honda shows up again in the world circuit. The only difference between him and 1 is that he's a little bit faster than before. His punches are thrown quicker, and it's harder to manipulate his guard for stars. This might sound bad, but there's one good thing that makes this fight so easy that calling it the simplest fight in the game wouldn't even be an exaggeration. Basically, that 1 minute Honda rush thing he does, it carries over to Honda too, but for some reason, you can knock him out if you land it. Like, it's not a simple knockdown, it's a full-on KO. He doesn't get up or anything. I think he just dies. Which is good because you win. Now obviously this isn't easy to pull off because you have a small chance to land it, but luckily there's a buffer strategy that I found on the Mike Tysons Punch Out Speedrunning wiki that makes it surprisingly easy to pull off. You start the fight off by buffering 20 left face punches to keep Honda distracted. Once you do all that, then you can dodge to the left 10 times to dodge most of Honda's punches, and then buffer 5 left gut punches as he prepares himself for the Honda rush to knock him out at the minute mark of the fight. There's actually many different buffer strategies you can do from this fight. I just chose this one in particular because it's the simplest out of all the other strategies. If you do fuck up during the fight, then well, it's too bad. I don't know, I'm not gonna help you out if you mess up. My best advice would be to just dodge and hit, but don't try to buffer dodges since Honda punches in a way where trying to dodge after getting hit only causes you to get hit again. But yeah, I think that's all you really need to know for Honda. There isn't really a backup plan to this, and you better get used to that because the further we go from this point, the more difficult the fights will be, so safety strats are few and far between now. You shouldn't need one though, since this entire fight is already buffered. Honestly, it's a pretty easy fight for the world circuit. You could say it's a little too easy for the world circuit, but don't worry, the guy after this will definitely make you think otherwise. Soda Popinski. The only thing I can say about this guy is that if you don't know him, you don't know him. But if you know him, you know him. Piston Honda made for a good first start for the world circuit, but in my opinion, Soda is the one that really displays how difficult Punch Out can get. He's one of the most random boxes in the game, which makes this annoying from Punch Out plays, but a nightmare for blindfolded runners. There have been strategies to beat this guy, but it's been changing constantly throughout the years to make this fight a little less of a pain in the ass. His punches are pretty powerful, especially the uppercuts he throws, but one thing that makes this fight a little easier is this random glitch or bug or whatever you call this. For some reason, if you hold the down button before he does an uppercut, he freezes in place for a few seconds, which you can then counter with the gut punch to get a star. Sometimes. Yeah, Soda can be kinda random in, well, everything. But you can usually get a lot of stars, which you can use to TKO him. For some reason, again, if you freeze him in his crouching place, there's a small window where any star punch just knocks him out clean, which is good because Soda's one meaty boxer, like punching him normally just ain't gonna cut it. You're gonna have to star punch him to do any sort of damage. So most of the fight here is just you holding down and hoping to God he throws an uppercut so you can land an easy KO on him. But even this can be random because Soda can randomly do a short delay or a long delay on an uppercut. Or maybe even more, I don't know, the speedrun wiki says there's 4 delays. I didn't even know there were 4 delays, let alone 3, but whatever, if you're feeling lucky then maybe you can get past Soda with some good luck. But the main point here I want you to know is that this fight right here can make or break the run. To start off the fight, man, I don't even know how you start this fight off. Don't get me wrong, Soda's pattern isn't too complicated, it's just a pain for blindfolded runs with all the 4 different delays this motherfucker can do. Even before the fight starts, there's still shit you can do in case you want to try a different strategy, but I won't be going over those, alright? I'll just start it quick and simple by talking about his 2 hooks and uppercut at the start. They can both be counted to get a star, but there's no buffer strategy to get both. When the fight starts though, you can do a quick dodge to the left and then counter with a right face punch to get a freebie, but the second one isn't buffered, you've got to time it on your own. I had an idea though that wasn't too bad, but you'd buffer a right gut punch after the face punch to counter a second jab before dodging to the left. The usual strat here is to dodge left, or to the right if you want to, it doesn't really matter. So hopefully dodge one of his uppercuts and then counter the second one for a star so you can knock him out. The only problem here is that, you know how I said before that Soda dropping stars isn't always certain? Well, if you do this and try to grab a star from an uppercut, you won't, which is not good. You can still buffer a star immediately to knock him out, but like I said before, this guy's got 4 delays. Each of those delays having a 75% chance of being an uppercut and 25% chance of being a hook. After a bit of practice, I realized that about 2 out of 4 of those delays will actually hit you, which is bad because you lose a star, and without the star from the uppercut I explained before, you're basically kind of fucked. From here, Soda can either do a jab or go back to his usual delay, which I just block for safety reasons. I don't want to deal with both of them. Now you're probably wondering why I'm going on about this, and that's because even though this strategy is a 2 out of 4 chance of working, that's still not too bad of odds for this guy. Like, if you really can't counter the second hook, then my best advice is just this strategy. If you can counter the 2 hooks, then luckily when he does throw an uppercut, you will get a star. So I recommend doing this instead, because although it has an unbuffered punch, it just makes the whole fight easier in general. But yeah, once you land those 2 punches, you dodge to the left or right to dodge one of his uppercuts. Once you hear one go off, make sure to hold down for a bit to freeze him in place. Although like I said before, he has a 25% chance to throw a hook, so keep that in mind so that if he does throw another hook, you can go back to dodging. Even if you do get hit, as long as you block the second one, you're still good to counter with a gut punch and then a star punch after to immediately knock him out. For phases 2 and 3, you just do the same thing really, so this is basically everything you need to know about Soda. So you just keep repeating phase 1 strategy until you TKO him. The only little extra thing I could add for now is that in case you do get knocked out by Soda, you'll start the fight off again with him throwing a bunch of uppercuts, which is good because Soda is throwing uppercuts. You can hold down and get 1 star, but like I said before, Soda doesn't always give you a star, so make sure to do it again just in case before countering his uppercut with a punch and throwing a star punch. This KO move seems like a good strategy to knock out Soda. Like, you can intentionally get knocked out so you can counter his punches for a free KO, which is a good idea, but the thing is that if you do this for phase 3, Soda will actually dodge the punch. Soda gets hit from the normal strategy because during the star punch, Soda tries to go in for a hook, meaning that he's busy doing something else so he can't dodge. This intentional KO strategy works only for phase 1 and 2 because for most of the punch-up boxers, there's a certain amount of star punches they can take before they start dodging them, which in Soda's case is 2. You can still use this intentional KO strategy for phase 2 by lowering your health down intentionally and then pulling it up once you back up. It's not necessary to do, but it's definitely an option in case you mess up on phase 2 and need a reset. And that's basically everything you need to know about Soda. He's definitely a roadblock in this circuit, so don't be surprised if you lose to him. But hey, this is a new boxer we haven't seen before. I wonder who the next guy's gonna be. Are you fucking kidding me? That's right, bitches! Bulbul is back and ready for more. He's got a whole wardrobe change and everything and is prepared to rock your shit up. Okay, not really. Bullet Bowl 2 is basically the same as 1, but has a few minor changes. One thing you have to know is that this guy is basically immortal. He does a whole Jason Voorhees from Mortal Kombat X and just comes back from the dead. And he can keep doing this too, this man does not give up. So the only way you can actually KO him is with star punches. The game tries to make this obvious by having Bull give you a star for free if you punch him when he rubs his ears. But it's never really stated, so this also acts as another roadblock for Punch Out players when they get to this part. Other than that though, Bullet Bowl 2 is basically the same as 1. He has a modified pad and his punches are thrown a lot quicker, so there's a bit less room for error here. But he isn't anything too crazy. There is surprisingly a buffer strategy you can do created by SummoningSalt that you can do for round 1 for an easy KO. You also use it for phase 2 and 3 as well, just it's a little bit different because phase 1 has Bullet Bowl doing rolling jabs at the start. But anyways, you start the fight off by throwing 4 left gut punches, 1 left face punch, 2 left gut punches, 2 left dodges, 1 right gut punch, a block to defend his jab, 3 left dodges followed by a left face punch and a star punch, 2 right dodges, 1 right face punch, 1 left dodge followed by a left quick dodge and then another left dodge, 1 face punch and a star, and then 1 duck, 1 face punch, and another star to send him down. This buffer strategy works pretty well and can give you a good time too, but it can go wrong if Bullet Bowl decides it to. You see, if we go back to the left quick dodge part, you would be this far into the fight against Bull. If he throws a hook, then the rest of the pattern stays the same. However, if Bull decides to do his ear rub pattern, it will stay in place and do nothing, so make sure to listen to Bull while dodging to see if he does his uppercut pattern or not. If he's doing his ear rub pattern, you can just buffer a star punch for a free hit. He'll do 3 rolling jabs before going back to his usual pattern, so dodge twice and then punch him in the face for some extra damage before blocking the next 2. That 1 punch from before should always help a little bit down, so a star punch is all you need to take him out. Luckily, you do have 1 star left, so dodge twice to the left with the first hook and then counter and star punch to send him down. For phase 2, you start off the fight by doing a left gut punch for a free star. Then you buffer a right gut punch and then dodge to the right 3 times and do a right face punch for a star. You then dodge to the right again twice and buffer another right face punch. That brings your star count to 3, and Bullet Bowl has already done his first 2 hooks, which means he'll split off and either do another hook or an ear rub pattern. Then we kinda do the same thing we did before, where we just dodge to the left, quick dodge left, and dodge left again for his hook. If he doesn't throw a hook, then you can just do the ear rub strat again. If he does throw a hook, you can just keep continuing the buffer strat I mentioned before, retaliate and star punch, and then duck to dodge his uppercut. You'd have to dodge 2 of his uppercuts though, which is worrying since, you know, Bull can stop doing the uppercuts randomly. But luckily for Bull 2, he's literally programmed to throw 2 uppercuts, so you can just dodge the next one and then counter and star punch him. Phase 3 is sort of the same with phase 2, except you don't need 3 stars to knock him out. So do the usual strategy, but once you get 2 stars, which happens after the 3 right dodges and punch, you can then dodge twice to the left to counter and star punch him, and then repeat the quick dodge part again to TKO him. This is how you would want most fights against Bull to go, but with how long it takes to knock him out, you can't be getting his rolling jab pattern since it will drag out the fight to the 2-minute mark, and we know what happens then. That's right, the bull charge from Bull 1 makes an appearance again. For Bull 1, we really don't want him to do the bull charge with how hard it is to time the punch, but you really don't want this to happen for Bull 2 because the timing is even worse to figure out. But luckily, for some reason, if you dodge the first bull charge, Bull's second charge actually has a way bigger window to time the punch. The way to time it is that literally as soon as you hear him move down, you can just punch him and that's it, he's down. Now I know this looks sort of difficult, but trust me, this is really easy to time. Like, I think this bull charge is worth getting because you just get a free knockout off him. So if you ever get to the bull charge section of the fight, which I won't be surprised if you do, KOing Bull takes forever, so expect to be here a lot, just make sure to dodge the first charge and counter the second one as soon as you hear him run down. Anyways, that takes care of Bull. I know I didn't really mention much backup strategies, but hey, I told you, these fights aren't easy. But I think we're done with the random boxers just showing up for some reason. I mean, Piston Honda was a minor circuit champ and Bullet Bowl was a major circuit champ, so if we're following this pattern, there's no way someone else is just gonna randomly show up. Like, who the hell would it be? Don Flamenco? Uh-oh. Okay, so for some reason, Don Flamenco is back. I'm not sure why, but my best guess is because he's not too crazy of a boxer to use, and switching up his pattern is pretty easy because, well, he's really simple. What's funny is that Don 1 is regarded as the simplest and easiest boxer to speedrun, but for Don 2 it's the complete opposite. He's the most random boxer in the entire game for no reason whatsoever. Luckily, we're not trying to speedrun the game, so we can ignore all that RNG manipulation for now and just stick to a simple and reliable pattern that knocks this guy down. Compared to Don 1, Don Flamenco 2 is quite different since he actually punches you at the start of the fight. His pattern isn't too complicated, but for some reason, you can randomly get star punches during the fight. You could use this to your advantage, but it's easier not to, it just makes everything more difficult. Anyways, back to this little graph here, you can see that it splits off for Don to do either of these 2 things. There's a little note down here from a Punch Out speedrunner that states the reasoning for it, as it depends on what move you do to counter his punch. Either way though, they're both really simple. There's a few strategies to take down Don 2, but the easiest one in my opinion is the one I made up, since it's a long but simple strategy to pull off, and there isn't much unbuffered punches. You start the fight off by holding down the block button to counter Don's first jab. If you look back at the pattern chart again, you can see that blocking splits off to the left side, which means he'll do a hook right after. Counter his first jab for 4 punches, then dodge once to the left and do a left face punch to punch him to counter his hook for a free star. You can block and then repeat this process again, but throw a star punch after the first 3 punches for some extra damage. Countering the next hook doesn't give you a star though. I'm not really sure why if I had to be honest, but the hook after that gives you 1, and if you keep following the pattern like before, you can KO Don around the 105 mark of the fight. Phase 2 is basically the same, but Don will actually stop doing his pattern at the 130 mark. He'll go back to his Don 1 pattern, which is where he just stands there and waits for you to punch. His health should be low enough already, so you can just punch and counter punch, but Don fighting back is random, so keep that in mind. You might need to hit him a few times before he actually punches. I should probably also add that Don's health tier for phase 2 and 3 can be random. It can either be a low, medium, or high refill. It doesn't change the strategy or anything, I just really want to nail down how random this guy is. The fact that he's even in this circuit is already defying odds. Anyways, for phase 3, you're gonna have to do something a little risky, which is knocking yourself out. Look, I know it sounds a little stupid, but trust me, alright? Just drain all your stamina so Don can punch you and you go down. When you get back up from the fight, Don will immediately try to attack you with a hook, but you can counter this hook immediately by doing a left gut punch. You can punch him 8 times in the gut until he blocks, so make sure to hit him 7 times, so for the 8th one you can punch him in the face and get more hits in. Don has his weird punching pattern where if you punch him in the face to the left twice and to the right once and keep repeating that, you can do a lot more punches to him. You utilize this here to drag out the amount of punches you do to 12, and then you can buffer a star punch to send him down. That's it, that's the simplest, easiest, no RNG way to beat Don. I know I said before in phase 2 that him countering is random, but you should be fine. I've practiced countless times on him, so you should be good. Another thing I like to add about Don too and lowering your health down, if you didn't know this already, if you press select before the fight starts, Duck lowers his hands move faster, and when you get into the fight, little max health decreases. I usually do this when facing Don, so I don't go to round 2 against him, but this can come with some drawbacks since Little Mac has a higher chance of getting KO'd from here since his health is already so low. This fight is sorta buffered, I don't see I can make much mistakes, but one thing I like to add is that whenever you counter Don, especially for phase 3 when you need to get that face punch in, it has to be a quick dodge that you're dodging so you can punch him in the face. You can't really do a full dodge to counter him, otherwise he'll block. That's it for Don though, and now we finally made it to the big 3. These next few boxers will be unlike anything before this game. I know the major circuit is the last circuit, but these 3 are just like you entering the end game of Punch Out. And also the fact that the last boxer is Mike Tyson obviously, but you know, we still have 2 more before to get to him, so you know. So the next guy on the list is Mr. Sandman, who's pretty intimidating to be honest. He actually looks like a professional boxer, especially with his little intro sequence. His actual fight is pretty simple to be honest, but there's a few key things to remember for the fight. The first few punches he throws are jabs, but after a while he throws a hook, which you can counter for a few punches, although you can't hit him in the face for it. It has to be all gut punches for some reason. As you continue the fight, Mr. Samuel will sometimes just stand in place for a bit to prepare for his Dreamland Express, which is 3 quick uppercuts. He usually does this at the 130 mark of the fight, and he'll do it again if you get knocked out, which some people do on purpose because if he does the Dreamland Express, you can hit him in the gut 10 times, 19 if you quick dodge the punches. It's hard to get a lot of punches on him, so most people use this to TKO this guy faster. But for most of the fight against Sandman, he'll do hooks at various times. But if you watch anyone speedrun Punch Out, you can see people do this sort of buffer against Mr. Sandman. The buffer is sort of like Don Flamenco's taunt move, where you punch him, dodge his counter punch, and then counter punch his counter punch to land more gut punches. You can keep repeating this move for basically forever since he doesn't do anything else except for his normal pattern, which is just waiting a bit before he throws hooks. It never really interrupts the pattern either, so you can just keep doing it for as long as you want. Anyways, there are 2 different ways you can approach this fight. There's a harder but more faster option, and a slower but easier strategy that I usually recommend for first timers. The thing is though, is that there is a high chance for you to go to round 2 against Mr. Sandman because he's pretty difficult to knock out. For most Punch Out boxes, you can lower the health quickly with star punches, but you can't do that against Mr. Sandman. There's no place to get stars, so you've got to be pretty precise with your punches if you want to TKO him. So to start the fight in round 1, Sandman will throw jabs at a certain pattern. He'll start with a left jab, a right jab, another right jab, a left jab, and then a right one after that. He'll pause for a bit before repeating this pattern again until he hits the 50-second mark. Now the reason you need to know this is because you need to counter each jab differently depending on where it's being thrown. A right jab can be countered with a face punch for some damage, but you can't do the same for the left jab because it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. If you block and then wait a bit before punching, you can do some damage, which isn't a lot, but it's good enough. There isn't a buffer at a time to punch, but it's usually when Sandman's sprite moves back here you can punch. Now obviously you don't know that since you're blindfolded, but like I said before, make sure to practice these strategies with your eyes open first. So to start off the fight, you hold the block button to counter his left jab. Sandman waits a bit before throwing a right jab, which you can't buffer a dodge for, but what I usually do is a slow duck and then a left dodge to dodge his right jab for a face punch. He'll throw another right jab, so dodge again for another punch, and then hold block to counter his left jab before dodging again to counter his right jab. You can just hold down here for now because Sandman will wait a bit before resetting his pattern again, which means he'll go back to another left jab. You repeat the starting pattern again until all 5 punches are thrown. Then he'll pause again to reset, but you'll reach the 50-second mark of the fight, so he'll stop this and do his hook pattern. Now you obviously don't know when 50 seconds will pass, so what I usually do after he's throwing his second wave of punches is just buffer a duck and a dodge, and I usually make it past the 50-second mark of the fight. Although sometimes if you were a bit too fast with your blocking, Sandman can actually sneak a left jab in before starting his pen, so be careful for that too. From here you can do the buffer I said before, where you punch Sandman in the face and then dodge and counter him in the gut. There's actually a few different ways you can approach this counter. The slow but easy method is just punching him in the gut 3 times, but a faster way is to buffer a right quick dodge and then throwing a right gut punch. The quick dodge method is pretty hard to do since you're blindfolded, and although quick dodges aren't too hard to do, buffering a punch after that can be sort of difficult, especially since you're doing it a lot of times, so it's up to you to decide where you want to go with this. If you choose to do the quick dodge method, then you're able to KO him before the 130 mark, which is where he does the Dreamland Express. Speaking about the Dreamland Express, there's no way to buffer a dodge to get out of the way because Sandman is so random with his delays, and since you're blindfolded, you don't know when he's preparing for it or not. Sandman's delays are pretty hard to explain, but don't worry, I'll go over them further in the video. But for now, when you hit the 130 mark, make sure you throw a left face punch so you both know that you made it to the 130 mark, and if you haven't, then you can just keep going with the buff strategy. But if Sandman does block, then you dodge to the left 4 times before doing a duck and then dodging some more. If you're able to time it right somehow, you can hit him in the gut 10 times, 15 if the last dodge was a quick dodge. If you do get hit, it doesn't really matter too much. Just make sure to dodge to the left twice to dodge his other uppercut so you don't get hit by them. Another thing I forgot to mention, which I probably should have said before, is that when you knock Sandman out the second time, he'll come back up with differing health. You can either have a low refill or a high refill. This matters a lot on the outcome of the fight, because if you're doing the quick dodge buffer but you can't counter the Dreamland Express, you can still actually TKO in round 1. If you do counter the Dreamland Express and you don't mess up on the quick dodge buffer, you can actually TKO in round 1. Good job, you beat Mr. Sandman. But if you're doing the slower strategy, or you don't counter the Dreamland Express and get a bad refill, then sadly, you're gonna go to round 2 against this guy. So yeah, we haven't been here before yet. You can't really do much in between rounds, but if you hit select and start the next round, your health will increase a bit before the fight starts, with how much it goes up being random. Anyways, for round 2 on Sandman, there isn't much of a difference except for the fact that your stamina bar, this little thing right here, is significantly lower than it was on round 1. This is bad because for some reason your stamina gets drained when you do the buffer strat. Not sure how, but it does, so keep that in mind that your stamina for round 2 is 15. You can keep continuing with the buffer strategy here to land 1 KO on Mr. Sandman, but make sure to count how much face punches you throw so that you can subtract that amount from 15. I can't state this enough when I say that you need to know where your stamina is at for this fight. When he gets back up, he's programmed to throw a Dreamland Express immediately, and after a bit of practice, I've realized how the delays work on this. Before he throws the Dreamland Express, it's a chance for Mr. Sandman to do a 7-second delay, a 9-second delay, an 11-second delay, or a 13 or 14-second delay. The reason why I'm telling you this is because you can clearly see here there's like no time difference between all 4 of them, especially with the punch out timer because it takes a lot faster than a normal one. This makes it so that it is literally impossible to create any sort of buffer strategy to dodge any of these punches. My only best advice is to buffer 2 left face punches before dodging to the left a bunch of times. This makes it so that you can dodge the first and second last delay from Mr. Sandman, so getting hit here is basically just a coin flip. If you dodge the Dreamland Express, then you should be able to punch him long enough to KO him. If you don't, then you can just keep doing the buffer until he's finally down. If you get hit, then make sure to dodge the other 2 uppercuts and make a mental note that if you were counting how much hearts you have, you'll lose an extra 3 from getting hit. You can keep doing the buffer strategy again, but at the 1 minute mark, Sandman will do another Dreamland Express, and the way you approach it here depends on how much hearts you have. If you have 3 hearts or less, then I advise to just dodge normally and hope you don't get hit, because if you do, as long as you dodge the other 2, your stamina will reset, and you can continue with your buffer strategy for another KO. If you don't get hit, then Mr. Sandman should be low enough for a KO, so these final few punches on him should do it. If it doesn't, and you realize you're about to run out of stamina, throw your last face punch before dodging to the left 3 times to avoid his hook. When you don't punch Mr. Sandman, he'll go back to his normal pattern, which starts off with an immediate hook, so as long as you dodge the first one, your stamina will reset, and you'll be good to throw another 9 punches. Once you knock him out again, Sandman will come back with yet another Dreamland Express, and my advice is basically the same as before. If your stamina is low, then just dodge, but if it's over 3, then you should be good. From there, Sandman doesn't really do anything after that, so all you have to do now is continue the buffer strategy until he's down for a TKO. And that's the longer version of beating Sandman. It's pretty long and complicated, but it's better to remember it just in case you get unlucky or mess up on round 1. A lot of things can go wrong with Mr. Sandman's fight, like if you mess up your stamina count or you lose it all before he does his Dreamland Express. From there, you're kinda fucked and might get KO'd in the process. In case you do ever get knocked out, when you go back into the fight, your stamina will be at 9 and Sandman will start off immediately with another Dreamland Express. You can buffer the 2 face punches like before and hope you don't get hit. An easy way for me to remember my stamina here is that if I do get hit by the Dreamland Express, my stamina will be at 4, and if I don't get hit, then it will stay on 7. Either way though, it doesn't matter what outcome happens because Samuel will go back to his normal pattern again, and you can just keep doing the buffer strat until he's knocked out. And that's basically everything you need to know about Mr. Sandman. And with him out of the way, we finally made it to the last boxer in the circuit, the final one before we get to Mike Tyson, and that boxer being Super Macho Man. Now Super Macho Man is a unique one in Punch Out because there is no buff strategy you can do to beat him. So if you suck at timing normally, then you're kinda fucked here. I won't lie to you, it's a pretty quick fight, but it can go wrong really fast, since from here, Punch Out is basically trying its hardest to go against you. If you get knocked out a certain number of times, Lil Mac won't get back up, like it's literally impossible to. And it's surprisingly easy to get knocked down since Macho Man has some moves that can take out half your health and even worse, knock you down. I remember when I was practicing Mike Tysons Punch Out blindfolded, and for me, Super Macho Man was the biggest roadblock, which sucks because he's basically the last guy in the game, so failing here having to restart is such a pain, man. There's surprisingly not a lot of Macho Man, it's just that there are two moves in particular that could kill a run if you mess it up. At around the minute mark, Macho Man will stay in place for a bit before doing a fast spin punch that takes out half your health. The second move happens when he gets knocked out, and when he comes back, he prepares for his super spin punch. I actually don't know what it's called, but he'll move back and do somewhere between 3 and 8 spin punches before you can counter and put some damage. But if you get hit by those punches, you're knocked out, like doesn't matter how much health you have, you're just gone. Those are the only two interesting moves, but for most of the fight, he can do either a left or a right uppercut and a hook. They aren't too hard to counter, but you can't buffer dodge out of the way, so it can be difficult depending on how you work with that. When you go into the fight, you can do 2 left dodges to avoid his first punch before countering him in the face 3 times, and then quick dodging to the right to punch him in the gut for a free star. This isn't guaranteed of course, since you need him to throw a hook for the first punch, and that has a 50% chance of happening. Either way though, if he throws an uppercut or something like that, nothing really changes, you'll just get blocked, which doesn't really matter too much, so don't worry about it. After that though, and most of the fight really, is just you waiting a little bit before dodging and countering, and then quick dodging to the right and following it up with a right face punch for a star. That star isn't guaranteed of course, it only works if Macho Man throws an uppercut, so if he throws a hook he'll just block your punch. Now if you think about it, this may seem a bit weird because you'd think that punching him in the face a bunch of times would do more damage, but no it doesn't. The delayed punch actually does way more damage for some reason. Even if you get blocked, it's still quicker to knock him out by doing this instead of the normal way, so although this is more difficult to pull off, it's just a better strategy to do. But yeah, this right here is basically most of the fight, just waiting a bit before dodging and then countering with this move. The delay between Macho Man's punches are usually the same, but the type of punch being thrown can either be quick or slow depending on if it's a hook or an uppercut. After a while though, Macho Man will stop and stand in place for a few seconds before doing a spin punch move I told you about before. Usually this happens after 2 quick uppercuts and all of this, but you're blindfolded so it's not like you can tell. Either way though, this small window of nothing gives you the opportunity to use the star punches you got from him, so I recommend buffering 2 star punches here to deal some extra damage before he throws it. What I like to do from here is dodge to the left a bunch of times to dodge a spin punch move. It isn't guaranteed since there isn't really a buffer strategy to dodge it, but it usually works and you can punch him in the face like 7 or 8 times as a reward. If you do get hit though, he takes out half your health, which I won't lie to you, that's a lot of damage. After that though, he goes back to his normal strategy, and from here you can just keep punching until he gets knocked down. For phase 2, Macho Man will immediately go into a super spin move where he stands in place for a bit before stepping back to do a bunch of spin punches. It's good to keep track of how many stars you have since you'll need 1 for a spin punch, but if you have 2 or 3 stars, you can actually buffer 1 here for some free damage. There's a chance for him to step back immediately, but there's also the possibility for him to just stay in place for a little longer, so an easy way to get more stars is to raise his guard before punching him in the gut for some damage. It's kinda like Piston Honda 1's guard raise, although you have to be just a little bit faster to sneak the punches in. Once Macho moves back for a spin punch, you have to dodge them, obviously. Now you're probably wondering how to dodge them, you know, like what's the buffer strategy to do this, and I hate to break it to you, but there isn't one. This all has to be manually timed, and although that might sound difficult, it really isn't. I'll break it down to make it easier for you, but there's no delay between his punches, they all come at it around the same time. The only thing you need to figure out is when to dodge and get that timing right. I recommend just practicing with your eyes open first and focus on when you're dodging so you can get the rhythm of when to dodge or not. Once Macho throws his last punch, which can be indicated by the fact that his last punch has a higher pitch at the end compared to the rest, you can punch Macho in the face 10 times before buffering a star punch. And another thing to note is that if you actually punch fast enough, you can do 20 punches instead of the usual 10. You can tell which one you get by how fast you throw your punches out, with the 10 being thrown at a much quicker pace compared to the 20. After that though, Macho will stand in place for a bit before going back to his normal pattern, so make sure to wait a bit before dodging. He'll go back to his normal pattern so you can repeat the same strategy from before to knock him down again. And for phase 3, nothing really changes. Macho Man just repeats phase 2 again, which is another spin punch. You can repeat phase 2 strategy again and you'll get the same outcome. The only difference here is that Macho has less health than before, so doing this will probably be a lot quicker. And that's it, that's Super Macho Man, the last boxer before Mike Tyson. The only other things I'd like to note though is that in case you run out of stamina, Macho Man will start breaking it down before doing an uppercut. There's no easy way to dodge it except for just buffering left and hope you don't get hit. But in case you do and you get knocked out, again, nothing really changes for Macho Man. You expect him to open up with a super spin punch, kinda like Sandman with his Dreamland Express, but no, he basically opens up with phase 1 strategy of doing nothing before punching. The only other interesting thing I can say about Macho Man is that once you've thrown 3 star punches, he'll start dodging the next few, but there's a way to counter that, which is to press up and start for a split second before letting go, because this manipulates his guard. Other than that though, that's basically it, and if you're wondering, round 2's pattern isn't that much different, so we can leave it at that for now, and finally get to the main event. The whole reason why everyone bought this game in the first place. Mike Tyson. Alright, this is what Nintendo hyped for in all its commercials, a one-on-one match against the man himself, the youngest heavyweight boxer in history that you can find in a licensed Nintendo game. Iron Mike, Mike Tyson, Michael Tyson, whatever his full name is. What even is his full name? Actually wait, let me check. Oh my god. His middle name is Gerald. Oh wait, no, this is Gerard. What? Anyways, here's Mike Tyson, who's one of the hardest bosses to beat in gaming history, really. Usually when people think of difficult games, it's usually annoying long levels and not really the boss himself. It's like Act 6 on Ninja Gaiden for the NES. I've already beaten these levels before, just send me back to Jackie for God's sake. Other bosses in the NES genre that are seen as hard, like the Yellow Devil and Mega Man, are difficult, but the most annoying part is having to restart the entire level from the beginning. But it's rare to see one boss pose as much of a threat as Mike Tyson in Punch Out, and that's mainly due to the fact that the skill difference between the player and the boxer is so big, it doesn't even feel fair anymore. The jump between him and Macho Man is so high that it doesn't even feel like you're playing the same game anymore. It almost seems comical to try comparing Mike Tyson to any of the previous boxers in difficulty. Okay, but that's enough glazing for now. Let's actually go for what happens during the fight. This is a tutorial, not a me writing contest. For the first minute and 30 seconds, Tyson will start off with an uppercut pattern that will instantly KO you if you get hit by the punches. First two are usually at the same time though, that being around the 5 and 9 second mark, but the rest after that can be different compared to each other because of the delay he gives. Now, most people will usually tell you that he has 3 delays for his uppercuts, but I argue there's actually 4 he can do. The first one is the normal one where he'll wait a bit before throwing, the second one is when he does a long delay before throwing, the third one usually happens after an uppercut where he'll immediately throw another quick one straight after with no delay between it. And the fourth one is the 8-second delay, which is where Tyson stands in place for 4 seconds straight before throwing an uppercut. He'll repeat the cycle until the 130 mark, which is where he'll throw hooks instead at a random pattern, and this time I really do mean random, it's basically impossible to predict. He doesn't do anything else after that though, so it's just hooks until the end of round 1. And yes, we'll be going round 2 against this guy, and maybe even round 3 if you're unlucky. I'll stop it there for now and break down how to get through round 1, and surprisingly, it's not as hard as you think it is since the strategy used is all reliable. That's right, it's a shit ton of buffers. I'm not sure if this is considered cheesing or not, but it's the only way that you're going to get through this fight without having to spend hours of your life practicing until you can make it through alive without getting knocked out too. The buffer strategy was created by Jack Wedge, and it's surprisingly easy to pull off. You start the fight off by punching Mike in the face 3 times and then punching him in the gut once. You repeat this twice, but for the last one, instead of a gut punch, you dodge to the left to avoid his uppercut. You can counter him in the face for some damage, but after that, buffer 4 gut punches before dodging to the left 5 times. You can then counter him in the face by doing 2 right face punches, but after that, you can punch him in the gut 8 times to drain out your stamina before repeating the same dodging method as before. You repeat that whole process again. If you did it right, this should delay Mike long enough for the timer to reach the 130 mark. And that's it, you've basically skipped the hardest part of Mike Tyson. From here, he'll throw hooks and there isn't really a buffer strategy to dodge them or anything. This part here is considered too random to try any strats on, but the main focus here is dodging, so making Lil Mac duck to dodge one of his hooks before countering it is mainly the strategy everyone does here. This section of the fight lasts for a while, so your stamina might get drained, but my best advice here is to keep dodging and only counter when you hear him throw a hook, since sometimes Mike will delay himself before throwing it. Another thing to note about the buffer strategy, there is some flaws to it, as after the first 5 dodges, you might still be a bit too slow to counter Mike in the face. The buffer doesn't have any alternative strats to it, but what I usually recommend is that in case you don't counter Mike in the face, try punching him in the gut around 2 or 3 times at the end of the buffer strategy to stretch it out a bit before it gets to the 130 mark. You can also try doing a quick dodge for the 5th dodge instead of a normal one, usually it times out well for you to land a punch on him. And that's basically it for round 1. For most other Punch-Out boxers, the main focus is knocking them out, but for Mike Tyson, the main objective here is just to survive until round 2, and then that's when we can start doing some damage, because round 2 Mike is completely different to round 1 Mike. For 1, he actually has a pattern that you can follow, and 2, you can land a decent amount of punches on him instead of just, well, 2. Mike will start off round 2 with 8 quick jabs, there being a delay between every 2 punches, and then he'll get into his usual pattern. He'll throw 3 hooks with the chance of them either being a left hook or a right hook is random, and from here Mike can either repeat this pattern or do 2 uppercuts before following him up with either a left hook, a right hook, or another uppercut, before restarting the pattern again. This is his usual pattern that he'll follow for most of the fight, but at around the 130 mark or later, Mike will stand in place for a bit as he blinks a bunch of times before throwing 4 quick hooks and following those punches with 2 delayed uppercuts. This can happen randomly anywhere after the 130 mark, but if you punch Mike when he's blinking, you can get a free star as he still does the hooks. Yeah, there's not too much to when he does this is just something that happens, but it's good to know since TKOing Mike here is incredibly difficult, so knowing his entire pattern is crucial to landing that last knockout. One pattern that you absolutely need to know though is the low stamina pattern, where if your hearts are at 0, Tyson will stand in place for a bit before throwing a hook and then 2 uppercuts before going back to his normal pattern again. I'll explain why you need to know this later, but let's go back to the start of round 2 again. You can press select to heal yourself if you want to, nothing too interesting happens here except for the trash talk that comes out of Mike's mouth. So when we get into round 2, Tyson throws jabs in. For the jabs he throws, you can actually block them and counter it with a left gut punch for a star. The window for landing this is pretty small, so I recommend practicing this section for a bit until you can get a feel for it. An easy way to execute this is to not let go of the block for the left gut punch part, since the game allows you to block and punch for some reason, but you do have to let go and press down again to block the next one. Your stamina at the start of the fight is 8, and it will go down for each block, and yes, we're doing this again, although it shouldn't be as complicated as before since it's 8 and not 15. You'll want to bring your stamina down so you can force Tyson to do the low heart pattern, which you can do pretty easily by blocking and countering since this gives you a free star to use later. If you aren't able to counter though, it's fine, you can just go back to blocking, but you're an extra heart down, so keep that in mind. I recommend blocking 6 or 7 jabs and then buffering a gut punch or 2 so you can better time yourself for dodging the low health pattern. If you keep left dodging repeatedly, you'll be able to avoid Tyson's hook and his uppercut, which you should be able to counter for 5 punches before dodging to the left once and then a quick dodge to move out of the way of his other uppercut to land 10 face punches on him. You could probably knock out Tyson during this part, but it depends on how much hooks you landed in round 1. If he isn't knocked out, then Mike Tyson will go back to his normal pattern, which is 3 hooks, which you can't really buffer dodges to move out of the way on, but you can for the first one. Just do a left dodge and a quick dodge before countering him in the face. Now from here though, you need to make a decision. If you didn't land any punches on round 1, then I suggest punching him in the face once and then throwing a star punch to knock him out. You waste a star, but it's better safe than sorry in my opinion. But if you feel confident that Tyson is on his last sliver of health, then you can just punch him normally to knock him out. Phase 2, Tyson will start off with his normal pattern of 3 hooks, which you can counter the first one pretty easily if you do a dodge and a quick dodge before punching. Make sure to punch him once and then throw a star since you can only land 1 punch on him, but if your star count is 2, then I recommend doing something completely different for his first hook. If you dodge once to the left, a quick dodge to the right, and throw a left face punch, you'll be rewarded a star, which gets your star count back up to 3. This is the only place you can really predict that you're getting stars, so I recommend just grabbing one here before continuing on with this pattern. Mike will throw his 2 other hooks, which are pretty hard to dodge, but a way to time a rise by punching Mike with a right gut punch twice before dodging to the left once. This makes it so that you're able to avoid Mike's hook and can counter him with a face and a star punch. You can do it again with his 3rd hook, and you might knock him out here to end phase 2. Something I forgot to mention was that when Mike gets back up, there's a chance for him to have a low refill, a medium refill, and a high refill. So if you're following this strategy but Mike gets knocked out way earlier, it's probably because he got the low refill, but to make things easier for all of us, I'm just explaining what to do if you got the high refill. So if you counter his 3 hooks but he's still up, Mike will delay himself before RNG chooses for what he should do next. Luckily we can use this against him by punching him in the gut repeatedly until all of our stamina is drained, which in our case is 4 since we punched him in the gut 4 times to dodge his hooks. So punch him in the gut 4 times before dodging to the left and repeating the low energy strat again. You should be able to knock him out here, at a pretty reasonable time at that. Now for the 3rd phase, you do the same thing again, although you're only going to have 1 star which you get from the first hook, 2 if you burn a star in phase 1. So once you get that, you can just repeat the strat like before, but for the 3rd hook you can just punch him in the face twice, or buffer a star if you have one. From here we repeat what we did before and drain our stamina so we can have Mike do his glow heart pattern again. If you use a star to start, then this part right here should be enough to TKO him, but if it doesn't or if you're doing the other buffer, Mike will go back to his normal pattern again, so you can do the star buffer and use it on his next punch to TKO Mike Tyson. And from here, you can think about all the boxes that came before you, and you can finally lean back and say to yourself, I beat Mike Tyson's Punch Out blindfolded. Now in a perfect world, this is how you would want the fight to go, but remember, this is Mike Tyson's Punch Out, anything can happen. Remembering the base of the pattern is good, but it's still crucial to know what to do if anything goes wrong. The biggest one being Mike's 130 blinking pattern. You'll know when this happens when Mike does nothing and you get a star for some reason, sometimes even working in your favor depending on when he does it. You can actually block the hooks and counter him in the face with 4 punches for each of the 4 hooks. You can keep dodging to the left to avoid and then counter both of his uppercuts, which should deal enough damage to knock him out. Now in case you ever get fucked up and get knocked out, that can be pretty bad. Not because he does anything crazy if you get knocked out, but it pushes the timer ever so closer to the 30-minute mark, which is not good. If you do ever get sent to round 3, you're still good to get a TKO or even win by decision, but losing to Tyson here is pretty easy due to his incredibly random pattern here. So for round 3, my main strategy here is to try and drain your stamina as fast as possible and do the low health buffer to do some damage. This can be pretty hard to do since Mike is incredibly random and will throw literally anything at you. The only downtime you get is this part here in the pattern where Tyson will stand in place for a bit before throwing 2 quick jabs, which you can use to your advantage by draining your stamina. The 130 pattern can also happen here, which I highly recommend blocking and countering because 1, Tyson will throw a ridiculous amount, and 2, it does a shit ton of damage for some reason. If you're able to survive until the round ends and your score is above 5,000, you will win by decision, which is actually how I won. There's a pretty good chance that you'll win here because KOing Mike gives you 1,000 points and hitting him with a star punch does 500, normal punches doing 10. Although 5,000 does seem like a lot, but remember you're lasting all the way till round 3 against him, so I doubt you'd lose unless you're intensely trying to. Either way though, if you beat him in round 2, or round 3, or by decision, you still beat Mike Tyson, so you've basically beat one of the hardest games blindfolded. And that's it. You can take your blindfold or bag over your head off and look at the end screen where Michael winks at the camera and congratulates you for winning. It's a pretty impressive feat to beat this game blindfolded, even though there's strategies to beat it. So this is something that would make a great story to tell your grandkids. Before I end this video, gotta give props to the people in the Punch Out community, even though I'm pretty sure they don't even know I exist. Sinister 1 was a big help for most of the strategies in this video. Like seriously, his tutorial series are amazing and I recommend you check them out. Another big thanks to Zalad1, I seriously thought these two were related because of the 1 at the end. He's the one who sort of made and perfected the art of buffering and contributed to the strategies to beat Glass Joe, Don Flamenco, and a few others. A third runner I'd like to thank is Jack Wedge. I actually don't know where to find him though, since the 1 just said he was the one that made the Tyson and King Hippo buffer. The only thing I could find was a YouTube channel by the name of Jack Wedge. I'm not sure if it's him though because the content he creates is interesting, but there's another one called Jackamus which I'm guessing is him because he plays Punch Out and was first to beat the game blindfolded. Another thank you goes to the other runners for the Mike Tysons Punch Out Speedrun wiki. They were a tremendous help for helping me understand and break down the patterns for all the boxers. But yeah, that's basically it. Thank you for watching.